Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We have got a great episode for you this week. We have got Kimberly Cecil Jones back in her co-host chair and back from her media role at the Kentucky Democratic Party's annual Wendell Ford dinner. And she has a few interesting news items that she's sharing tonight, as well as news in the ongoing Trump-Mitch power struggle. We got that covered in News of the Week. Then we'll bring on our guest, the Reverend Dr. Anthony Everett, to discuss the role of prophetic activism, the role it has played and does play in successful social movements, through the history of our nation. And then we're going to close with our call to action and events calendar. But first, are you ready? Are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? And again, why do we say purple, not blue? Because look, we're the kernels of truth. We're not going to be the kernels of half truth. Like, yeah, we'll be blue tomorrow. No, it's going to take a little bit of work. But we can do it. You know, we've got some significant work to do if we're going to beat back the red wave of bad politics and policy from the GOP supermajority in Frankfurt, from their efforts to stop teaching history that makes white people uncomfortable, to deleting all abortion access in our Commonwealth. We need your help to stand effectively against the GOP super duper majority. So if you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, join Progress Kentucky. All you need to do is follow us on social media, share our content, hit like when you see us, let people know that this is great information and great viewpoints on the political landscape of our Commonwealth. And slowly and surely, we can get folks engaged. We get them on our team and make sure that we push back against that horrible policy. But we are very excited to have with us a great group of co-hosts tonight. We're going to check in with them. They're going to tell us who they are, where they are, and what their protest sign says today. So I'm Aaron. I am coming to you from Chilesburg, a community in the outskirts of the Lexington growth boundary. And my sign says, "No, Aaron Rodgers, that's not what Dr. King meant." That's me. All right, Doug, what do you got?
Yes, Doug Price from Harrison County, Kentucky. You may have heard of Henry Clay. Well, he practiced law in a log cabin which still stands just off the courthouse square in downtown Cynthiana. Come see it sometime. My sign says, I'm going to hold it up here, "Are idiots allowed to vote in Kentucky?"
Obviously, they must be. If you look at who's elected in this state, that's not nice. That's not fair. That's not building bridges and forging bipartisan efforts to make our state better. But, that's not the mood I'm in tonight. So, Kimberly Cecil Jones, what do you got?
Hey, Aaron and everybody. I'm right here in Louisville, Kentucky, live and in living color. And my protest sign says today, I hope everybody can see it, "Stop premature Christmas decorating." Yes, and that was very bipartisan.
That is awesome. And I am definitely on team stop early Christmas decorating. That's for sure. We have got, I'm not going to name names, but there are a number of folks in our neighborhood that, went from Halloween immediately to Christmas lights. And I just feel like, I guess what's happening is that in the war on Christmas, Christmas decided the best defense is a good offense, at least in my neighborhood. All right. So, let's jump into news of the week. Oh, of course, if you have a sign, go ahead and throw it in the chat. If we like it, we can throw it on the screen. And whatever you're protesting this week, share it with the folks here watching. So, all right. Story number one. This is the ongoing saga of Mitch and Trump. On again, off again, and again and again. There's a new book out right now by Jonathan Karl, the journalist, which brings us the story about the prominent role Mitch took in disinviting Trump from attending Biden's inauguration. Basically, Mitch, at that point, was afraid to give Trump another chance to disrupt the already shattered peaceful transfer of power, if you recall January 6th. So Trump caught wind of the fact that he was not going to be invited and decided that he, of course, would choose not to attend and created his own sad little losers send-off at Andrews Air Force Base. Of course, that was all back when Mitch seemed to think that Trump's behavior was a problem. He soon backtracked. He slow-walked efforts to remove Trump from office, and then he said he would, of course, vote for him if he was on the ballot in 2024. And with Mitch McConnell, what we do know is that the Mitchpocracy is, as always, simply staggering. So yeah, that's the latest in the Mitch and Trump fight. And we mentioned, I think, last week that Trump had issued a statement when the Biden infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, passed, talking about how anyone who voted for it was a complete sellout and trying to help Biden get elected or reelected. Of course, no concern about actual infrastructure in our nation and how sad it is and how much it actually needs those investments. So, at any rate, any thoughts on the Mitch and Trump saga?
Sure, I'll jump in real quick. Mitch will always choose what is best for him and his hold on the party. Of course, that can change daily. He can sense the way the wind blows and change his position in a heartbeat. And as a matter of fact, he can lean one way today, and then 4 hours later, he's leaning the other way. Kimberly, you have any thoughts?
Of course, I always have a great thought about Mitch McConnell because number one, Mitch McConnell is going to always, always, always do exactly what he does, and he does best. You never know which way the wind is going to blow when it comes to Mitch McConnell. And thank you, Mitch. That needs to be ditched for persuading Donald Duck Trump not to come to the celebration for Biden. We do appreciate you for that. But otherwise, he's been in too long. He needs to get out. And who cares about Mitch McConnell?
I wish we could just not care about Mitch McConnell. That guy is just clearly, as Nate says, principled stands, and Mitch McConnell have yet to make each other's acquaintance. All right, so moving on to the next story, which is related to some elements of this. Doug, what you got?
Yes, I'm going to talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We covered that a little bit last week, so I have some comments from that and additional comments. This law was signed into law this week, and there were a few Republicans there, actually. Rob Portman, our neighbor to the north, he is retiring GOP senator, and he specifically called out the ability of this bill to fix the Brent Spence Bridge as one of the key motivations of ensuring a deal got done on this infrastructure bill. You would think that our Representative Thomas Massey would be interested in funding for the Brent Spence Bridge, but no, he is more concerned about using his Master of Science degree from MIT to make the case that COVID is no big deal and it's governmental overreach to do mandates and actually try to save lives. There was one other Republican representative there, Don Young from Arkansas, along with a few senators, Susan Collins, Mitch Romney, and Lisa Murkowski. And talk a little bit now about the other Kentucky congressional members. Upon voting no in the Senate, Rand Paul stated, instead of bringing down soaring gas prices, it will push them even higher, along with the price of food and other necessities soaring from inflation. This is not the plan Kentucky families need. I think Senator Paul, now he's an MD, so he probably doesn't know much about gas prices, but I don't think inflation has anything to do with that. Andy Barr voted against the infrastructure bill, calling it big governmental socialist agenda. Jamie Comer said, I vote no on the $1.2 trillion bill. It really doesn't contain enough infrastructure. It doesn't affect my Kentucky 1st District because apparently they don't need mass transit and green energy. Brett Guthrie said, There's a lot of Green New Deal things like electric charging stations and electric buses and such things such as that. Hal Rogers, we desperately need improvements to our infrastructure, but this bill puts our country on a fast track towards socialism. You have to give these guys credit. They must get together to discuss talking points and take these to the public. Everybody got to watch out for that socialism. And while not related to the current infrastructure bill, Congressman Barr had this to say about an infrastructure grant for the city of Frankfurt. He announced the city of Frankfurt will receive $616,000 federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to support revitalization efforts in Frankfurt's Home Street corridor. Upgrading the Home Street corridor will enhance economic development and quality of life for residents. So he was there to hand out that money. And I guarantee you that when he hands out money from the infrastructure bill, we're going to be reporting that, noting that, yeah, he wants to hand out the money, but he certainly didn't vote for it. You guys have any comments on this story?
Oh yeah, it's I think we mentioned it before. It's like fait accompli. It is going to happen. They are going to proudly tout some of the federal investments in roads and bridges because that's what a huge chunk of the bill actually is, despite what our Congress members seem to think. It's not socialist EV charging stations exclusively or anything like that. So we'll watch. It'll happen. We'll call them on it. I think that's the general the approach on that one. Kimberly, what about you?
I just want to say that the party actually needs to up the ante on the messaging. Us as politicos, we know what's going on. We live, eat, sleep, and breathe this. It's very exciting to us. We love what we do. But for the average Kentuckian, they really don't know. And even Congressman John Yarmouth talked about this, that messaging is extremely important. And right now is the key time to get it out everywhere that Democrats did this. And also exactly what's in the bill. Each state needs to know exactly how they are going to benefit from the bill. Otherwise, it just sounds like a bill. Yeah. And everybody else is going to get it. But what is Kentucky going to get? That's what I would like to say.
Well, I don't know if anyone's seen this show, Kernels of Truth. But last week on this show, we spent a lot of time breaking down the actual numbers of what Kentucky will get from this bill. So if anyone's at a loss and doesn't know, go to last week's show. You can listen to it as a podcast. You can watch it. I did some graphics, used the Brent Spence Bridge as a backdrop for the numbers. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's money that's going to help Martin County with its water woes. It's money that's going to help bring broadband to every single person in Kentucky, affordable broadband. It's money that's going to fix streets, roads, bridges. And yes, it will also bring some EV charging so that the batteries that are going to be making an E-Town for Ford will actually go in vehicles that can be used in Kentucky, because that would be good. I think that would be good at any rate. So yeah, I completely concur. And, hint, like, that's what we do, right? So I know we really like it. We really are into it, but we don't do it just so we can talk to each other as much as I really do like just talking to y'all. If you hear what we're saying, share it, because that's the vision here. That's why we do Kernels of Truth, is so we can, in fact, share some decent content about what's actually happening in our state. And yeah, so I concur with Congressman Yarmouth. I concur with you, Kimberly. And yeah, look at last week's show. Big numbers. Absolutely.
I think we're going to have to push that out extremely hard and maybe put some bullet points on there and just say, hey, Kentucky, we're getting some money all over Kentucky, right? Everybody's going to get some money. No,
yeah.
Not everybody.
Unfortunately, we can't keep it from, those lawmakers' districts. No, we wouldn't do that, because I'm in one of those lawmakers' districts, unfortunately. So yeah, it doesn't go to just the blue districts. It goes to every district across this country. There's a formula that dictates a lot of the spending. There's a bunch of buckets that, important projects can actually apply to. That's why that Brent Spence Bridge is going to get some, significant resources to fix that problem. And that's why Rob Portman talked about it. And that's why I bet you that's why Mitch McConnell voted for it. And, we will see when the ribbon cutting happens for the Brent Spence Bridge, McConnell and Portman are allowed to attend. Any of those other jokers from the GOP cannot attend. And I will go physically put myself in between them and their motorcades to keep them from showing up, because that is garbage.
I want to see that. I want to see that.
I have done it. I have locked myself to things before. That's a story for another time. And I think the statute of limitations has expired. Oh, yeah, it definitely has. But I'm going to go ahead. We're going to move to the next story because I feel like we've spent a lot of time on this one. And I think the next story is to you, Kimberly. So you're going to tell us about what you were doing last week with the Wendell Ford dinner. What went down?
Yes, it was Friday night at the Crown Plaza Hotel here in Louisville, Kentucky. And if people don't know what the Wendell Ford dinner is, it was actually named from a great senator right here in Kentucky, Wendell Ford. And so back in the 90s, the Democratic Party really didn't have any money here in the Louisville, Jefferson County area. So they said, hey, let's put together this little thing. And hey, Wendell Ford was like, yeah, let's do it. And at that point, they would bring people in. Wendell would bring people in from, DC, from Washington, from everywhere. And this would be the prime fundraiser for the Louisville, Jefferson County Democratic Party. And it's gone on every year. It's always a sold out event. And it's like the who's who in the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, our governor was unable to attend. However, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman did a great speech in his absence and talked about how the party is going to be moving forward. Also with this money. And also the main thing of the event was, I'm going to save the big one for last, but what I was doing there, Aaron. Actually, I was there as working for the party, and I was streaming live all night and interviewing all of the up and coming mayoral candidates, interviewing Senator Morgan McGarvey, Congressman John Yarmouth, Raul Cunningham of the NAACP, a great legend. So many people were there. It's impossible to remember everyone, but it was a great event. However, it did have a little bit of tea to it, but the one thing that we did accomplish is those of us who are on the executive committee, and ladies and gentlemen, you have to be elected to the executive committee, and we were all sworn to secrecy by our chairwoman, which is Virginia Woodward, not to say a word. So we did not breathe a word. Actually, right now, we are looking for a building or a lot to build a Democratic headquarters here in Louisville. And the surprise of the night was we gave Congressman John Yarmouth, we gave him a little house with a little plaque on it. And when we get the building or get it built, one of the two, it's going to be called the John Yarmouth Louisville Democratic Building. What do you all think about that?
That is super nice. And I think, given Chairman Yarmouth's, time in DC and how kind of gracefully he's leaving, I love that. That said, that's not the story I wanted to hear. I want to hear the tea. What happened? Not the niceties. Yeah, it's good that we gave John Yarmouth a little house and they're going to name something after him. But I bet there was some drama there. I bet there was some political internecine fights.
Yes, but no, not any fights. I didn't, because otherwise I would have captured that, and it would have been on TMZ, right?
But yeah, there was some shade. I bet there was some shade.
There was some shade. There was some shade. Senatorial candidate Charles Booker arrived later in the evening, and that is because he attended. There was also something going on at the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, an awards program. So he went there first and came actually to the event. And Congressman John Yarmouth was speaking, and he was talking about how, Mitch McConnell called him, and they had a very gracious conversation. But he said it was nice and all of that, but still Mitch sucks. And the room just rumbled with laughter because it was so funny. But what was really that everyone picked up on, but no one really spoke about it until later on, is that he talked about Rand Paul, and he acknowledged so many other candidates in the room, and Charles Booker was there in the room, but he did not acknowledge him. So a lot of people came to me and they were like, Kimberly, did he acknowledge Charles? And I said, well, I didn't hear him acknowledge Charles, but we could say that could possibly go back to Amy McGrath's campaign, and that it was Congressman John Yarmouth that had to get that Zoom together because senatorial candidate Charles Booker refused to stump for Amy McGrath at the time. So I don't know if it's some little this and that going on, or a little undercurrent, something, but it surely was some tea going on at the Wendell Ford dinner.
It's not like there's that many candidates in that race, right? It's not like, oh, I just slipped my mind, right?
Right,
but
right.
Yeah, I hear you. As much as I think Charles Booker's got a lot going on for him, I was similarly displeased with how he handled the end of his first Senate run, right? Like, we asked him point blank on this show or its precursor, like, whoever wins, are you going to campaign for them? Because at that point, we had this three very legitimate candidates. We asked them all the same question: no matter who wins, are you going to come out in favor? Take that Rocky Atkins and Andy Bashir, model of victory, or path to victory, and they all said they would, and then they didn't.
Oh, but I forgot the main tea.
Nope.
The main tea was there was a woman there that's affiliated with the party. She was media relations that night, and we were trying to get Charles Booker for his interview, for the party. And he was all over and everywhere. So as he was going out the door with his many people of his entourage, he was stopped by both of us, the media relations individual and myself. And Charles was like, I have to go. I'm like 45 minutes late. And it was really about his 3-month-old child. So as a mother, children come first in anything. However, I will call a name, Mr. William Carr, who was his handler that night. Not sure about his position, but he was extra nasty. And he's like, yay, hi. And you would have thought that he was like a linebacker or something, like, wait a minute, and he was raising his voice and very, very disrespectful. But afterwards, I was able to talk to one of Charles's team members, and his name was Leo. He was very, very nice. And I told him that the candidate should have never been involved with that chaos, and that there is something to be said about customer service, because if people are getting this type of treatment, they will not vote for Charles Booker.
Well, they're not going to vote for Rand Paul. Let's be honest. Anyway, the Wendell Ford dinner, I don't care what Booker does. They're not going to vote for Rand Paul. All right, so we should move on, because we have the news in under 5 minutes, and Kimberly has a number of stories to run through, and we want to get to our guest, because we're very excited to hear from Reverend Dr. Anthony Everett, and prophetic activism, and importance it is for civil rights movements across the nation and throughout time. But before we do that, we're going to hear from Kimberly Cecil Jones on the news in 5 minutes or less. And I think Doug has the timer ready.
Thank you, Aaron. Police training in Kentucky allegedly warns of hazards posed by Hispanic culture. The LMPD, which is the Louisville Metro Police Department Training Academy, reportedly discussed Hispanic culture versus middle class culture. The 39-page slideshow was provided to the Leo, an alternative newspaper which Congressman John Yarmouth used to own before he became congressman, found that the lesson was included in the 2020 training. According to the Leo, the lesson would teach students in the class to identify specific aspects of Hispanic Latin culture that many pose to be hazardous to law enforcement. Get this, such as being more fatalistic, spontaneous, and they say that Hispanics and the Latin community rely on family and friends. I don't really see how that can impact law enforcement, but who am I, right? Okay, last week, the Courier Journal revealed that 2 officers who were once members of the KKK, meaning the Ku Klux Klan, were still working as Jefferson County sheriffs in the department. One was about ready to retire, so he's going to retire. Both of them are actually going to be leaving the department. But one said, oh, I just thought it was a social group. I only went one time. He was asked, did you swear in? Yeah, but I only went one time and I never went back. Yeah, okay, buddy. We believe that. That's why the Department of Justice is investigating the Louisville Metro Police Department and the Metro government, right? So right now, there is a shortage of between 500 and 600 positions. If you've been looking for a job with great benefits, it would be just lovely to work for the state. They are in dire straits right now for social workers, and they are rallying right now for better pay and conditions at the state capitol. Why? As I was a targeted case manager, I understand how it can absolutely be overwhelming. And they're having all kinds of positions available with the Child Protective Services, when people get different benefits, all kinds of positions. So if you would like to go on the website, take a look, give some of our great people that work in these type of positions a break for a moment. By getting more people, it'd be wonderful. The pay, you won't get rich, but you'll be rich with the rewards of helping. Also, Republican legislators are skeptical of Louisville Police Accountability Board. In the wake of Breonna Taylor and protests over racial injustice, Louisville created a citizens review board to try to create more oversight of a much troubled police department. Supporters hoped that the board would have subpoena power, but here goes the caveat to that. Only the Republican-led legislature can vote to give them that power. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would not hold my breath for that. Also, national polls find that majorities and minorities support abortion rights, and they oppose state efforts to limit choice by 75%. And the 75% agree the decision should be left to women and their doctors. House Bill 91, of course, is on the ballot in November of 2022, a legislative effort to make all abortion illegal in Kentucky. So this poll would be very interesting if it broke out numbers by state, but it's useful all the same. We're going to leave this on a great note. Our wonderful Governor Andy Beshear, says all Kentuckians are now eligible. If you are over the age of 18, all Kentuckians are eligible to get their booster shot. Okay, so you get a shot, you get a shot, you get a shot, I get a shot, we all get a shot. Thank you to our Governor, Andy Beshear, for taking care of Kentuckians. Back to you, Aaron.
Doug? What's
4.5 minutes.
She did it.
Wait a minute, I want you all to see my victory dance.
Those are some pretty eye-opening stories. So members of the KKK, there are like cops in Louisville that were members of the KKK and are still on staff.
Yeah. And it all goes back to many years ago. I remember it, probably like in the late 80s or early 90s. It was a Black family that lived in a predominantly affluent area of mainly consisting of white, Caucasians. And their house was set on fire. So it was just the big to do. Come to find out years later, the judge was tainted, the officers were tainted, and all of this. So the Courier Journal reported upon that there was Ku Klux Klan in LMPD and the Sheriff's Department 2 decades ago.
The other story
Yeah.
that seemed super notable, I think, is that it's all important news, but I think the fact that we are in such a dire straits for social workers in the state of Kentucky, that gives me great concern. There's been some really good journalism happening here in Lexington with the Herald Leader. They've done a few deep dive stories, kind of highlighting what they're going through, and the caseloads are overwhelming. The compensation is underwhelming. They can make more as a bartender or working at Costco or whatever. And not have to worry, not have kids' lives in their hands, right? And it just seems like we ask a lot of these people, and we aren't, like so many things of the state government. We ask so much, and we do not compensate them, and it's just a total ringer that they're going through right now. And I hope that looking at that story, it seemed like they met with Andy, which is great, and I hope the governor has some ability to do something. I think it's challenging because the legislature has, got such a lockdown on his ability to give raises or anything like that. So it's going to take some bipartisanship, which, these guys don't seem to want to do any bipartisanship. I remember reading in that story, the initial story about how bad things were for the social workers, that, one of the Republicans like, well, geez, if they're doing so poorly, then maybe we should cut the budget. Like that
Doesn't make any sense.
That's not how you fix the problem. That is
Like
absolutely
I
not how
said,
you fix the problem.
Like I said earlier, I had to work alongside a lot of child protective service social workers, which is part of the Department of families. And I tell you, there's so many children right now as we speak, with Kentucky being one of the top states for child abuse, that are just slipping through the system right now. There are so many families that are not able to maybe get their SNAP, which is food stamp benefits, as quickly as they need them, or anything, because there's not enough workers. Plus, there are laws. When I was a targeted case manager, the state of Kentucky says I cannot have over 20 clients. There are laws about this as well. So if there's any kind of way to get something done, Andy's the one to do it, because he does have that background as our attorney general, and he knows what's at stake.
Yeah, and of course, this is the state that is number one in the nation in child abuse, right? So the need is significant, it's real, and I hope that he does put his significant ability to fix problems to work there for sure. Doug, any comments on the sea of stories that just washed over us?
Sure. Yes, I have a couple of things. I have a personal reference, I guess, to the KKK. In 1970, when our family lived in Glasgow at Barren River Lake State Resort Park, where I worked, we were at the annual downtown Christmas parade. And, Santa Claus is always the last person in the parade. And out of the shadows came a group of about 20 KKKers with their hoods and all that on there. We had our 2 children with us, and it was just so awful. We, of course, immediately left. And every now and then you hear about leaflets that are left, like in Georgetown, also in Carlisle, Kentucky, about the KKK, and it's still here. I want to comment about the social workers should be paid more. I think the crux of the matter is legislators have not been good stewards of we the people over the last 20 plus years. I lay this at the feet of those who resist tax reform. Without this, the downward cycle continues. State employees who started working 10 years ago have not had a pay increase ever. State retirees have not had a cost of living raise in over 10 years. Meanwhile, the cost of living continues to go up. Those are some of my comments.
It's true.
Well, important stories, Kimberly. Thank you for sharing them and sharing them quickly. So we're going to move now. That was news of the week. We will soon be speaking with Reverend Dr. Anthony Everett about his work with Mission Behind Bars and Beyond and his support for prophetic activism. But first, remember, folks, if you like what you hear on Kernels of Truth, please consider supporting our efforts with a financial investment. We are not as expensive as the Brent Spence Bridge, I'll tell you that. But, we've got a goal of raising $1,500 for our current organizing project, and we're pretty far from hitting that goal. So you can help us out, make a contribution. Doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to buy a bridge, but anything you can do, we'll put it to good work because there are no salaries involved. In Progress, Kentucky, we are an all-volunteer effort. We do not have a lot of overhead. It's going to the organizing projects directly to buy the postcards and the postage and the materials to get the work done. So please do it. Go to our Secure Act Blue website and make a donation. All right, so we are now moving on to our interview. Dr. Everett is an ordained elder of the United Methodist Church, having served as an associate director of the African American Ministries for the Kentucky Conference. He pastored and served in churches from Dallas, Texas to Lexington, Kentucky, and Cleveland, Ohio. He has a passion for human rights, transformative justice, and prophetic activism. Dr. Everett graduated magna cum laude from Paul Quinn College. He earned an MDiv degree with certification in urban ministry from the Perkins School of Theology at SMU, where he was a seminarian for worker justice intern with Interfaith Worker Justice. Dr. Everett earned a master's in divinity degree from United Theological Seminary as a fellow of the Prophetic Preaching and Praxis Walker Cummings cohort. Dr. Everett is an advocate for the human rights of oppressed and marginalized Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC folks. His advocacy and faith led him to support sentencing and criminal justice reform legislation in Kentucky and nationwide, including legislation seeking voter enfranchisement for citizens who were previously incarcerated, the abolition of for-profit prisons, and the transformation of the mass incarceration criminal punishment system. Dr. Everett is the executive director of Mission Behind Bars and Beyond, an organization which works to reduce recidivism for returning citizens. Reverend Dr. Everett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I'm having a good time this evening. We're getting into some important stories, having a good conversation, and I'll be honest, I've been looking forward to chatting with you for quite a while because it's an issue that I think is really important. I know that there's a whole world of faith-based actors in our public square, and it seems to me time and time again the folks who kind of capture the nation's attention quite frequently are the folks on the right who are bringing this kind of Christianity that I don't necessarily recognize. Where I feel like maybe they don't read the red letters in their Bible that closely, but spend a lot of time talking about abortion, spend a lot of time talking about, I don't know, I guess the prosperity gospel or whatever. There's actually a chant recently in church, "Let's Go Brandon," which of course everyone who's paying attention to politics knows what "Let's Go Brandon" actually means. But they were chanting that in a church. So I feel like, that gets a lot of attention, but there's also this a movement, a historical movement that kind of is the opposite in terms of what it looks like in terms of engagement in the public square and in policy. And I feel like you are absolutely a representative of that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, kind of Mission Behind Bars and Beyond and the work that you guys are doing there before we talk a little bit more about prophetic activism.
Okay. Yeah. And just to let you know, I don't know if it's my internet, but I keep going in and out in terms of hearing you sometimes. But let's go ahead and move forward. I also just want to say hello to Kimberly and hello to Doug as well. Can you all hear me? Everybody hears me?
Absolutely.
You all right? Okay, cool. So Mission Behind Bars and Beyond is an ecumenical 501c3. We're based in Louisville, but we're across the state. What we do is we work with returning citizens and helping them to get reacclimated to the rest of Kentucky. And also our greater goal is to get Kentucky reacclimated or transformed so that returning citizens can come to a place where they're no longer returning citizens, that they can actually fully participate in the political processes, in employment, and all the things that they should be able to readily be engaged in. And part of the problem here in Kentucky is that we're the seventh highest and we have the seventh highest incarceration rate in the country. And that incarceration rate is greater than a number of different countries. In fact, the next country that comes after us is El Salvador. So, you're less likely to get incarcerated in El Salvador than you are in Kentucky. If you are African American or you're a woman, you're going to have even a greater risk of being incarcerated. Our population here is somewhere with 7.5 or 8.5% in Kentucky, yet we make up over 22% of those who are incarcerated in Kentucky jails. And so that is what we do with Mission Behind Bars and Beyond. And our focus is that we will focus on one individual and have 3 to 5 mentors with that person. We'll work with them for 6 to 12 months. And our recidivism rate, the rate of them returning back, is less than 20%. The state of Kentucky's recidivism rate is over 41%. And so we're seeing ourselves successful. We've had to deal with COVID-19. And so in dealing with COVID-19, what we've done is we've created a virtual mentoring program where we're using software to communicate between mentors and mentees, but the objectives are still the same, to help people to adjust to the society, and so that they don't return back to prison. And one other part of that is that we believe in restorative justice circles. So within that group, that 3 to 5 people, we're either going to have someone who was victimized by that person, or we're going to have someone as a surrogate for the person that's been victimized. And so that there's a fullness of the experience and the fullness of this person returning back.
Wow. That sounds like a really important program for sure. And then I don't know, this is like completely 100% related, but I got to imagine, getting people engaged in society here in Kentucky, as you noted, the incarceration rates are incredibly high. And also when people are out of prison, they don't automatically get their voting rights restored. It requires, the governor to do that, which of course Andy Beshear did. Kind of, one of the first things he did as governor was to restore the voting rights of over 140,000 former felons, incarcerated folks coming back into the community. But it seems like that's a no-brainer. That's something we should fix in our state. Is that we're one of the very few states that doesn't just automatically give folks their voting rights back. They have to have some. The governor has to do this thing, which really seems ridiculous to me.
But there's some states you don't lose your voting rights. You can vote in jail. And so why are we taking this humanity away from people? That's not. There's nothing that is helping that individual to be a better person when they come out, if they can't vote. And the other thing that I would say is that yes, Governor Beshear had signed legislation to allow for over 140,000 people to vote. But the problem now is that a lot of those people don't know that they can vote, and they have to go back and go through a process in order to get engaged. So part of the work that I do with a number of other organizations is that we work together. There's a coalition of us that work together to contact people who were previously incarcerated and let them know, or ask them, are you eligible to vote? Because we don't know whether they're eligible or not, but we contact them and let them know that this is something that they need to follow up on, and we can help them get through that.
That's again important work. I gotta imagine it's, it's hard to do that, have those conversations or, get in touch with folks, but I'm glad you guys are doing that work. I know there's other groups that have kind of done similar voter education engagement efforts, because it is so important that those folks know that they've got their voting rights restored. And it doesn't seem like there's a system to do it. So glad you guys are stepping up into that breach. All right. So I want to move on a little bit to this kind of idea of prophetic activism, which, kind of from Martin Luther King Jr. to today, right? This is a very proud legacy of engagement. This, before Martin Luther King Jr. for sure, but now we've got Reverend William Barber, the current Poor People's Campaign. We've got I think Senator Warnock, who is quite literally standing in the historic footsteps of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Preaching from the same pulpit. But tell folks what is prophetic activism. And why do you think it plays such an important role in social justice movements?
So I think that, as you mentioned, you go back, and it's definitely way a long time before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And so when I describe prophetic activism, I describe it as this intersection of Black liberation theologies and critical race and social learning theories. I would add in necropolitics as well. But it dissects this ongoing history of the oppression of people of African descent through the fight for Black lives to matter, empowering the hope for future generations. And so realistically, if I was looking at prophetic activism and to think about Black liberation theology, I would think that definitely the church has played a major part over the years in what we have come to know as the United States of America, to be able to be on the front line of change in the lives of people who are oppressed and marginalized in the society, and especially Black folk. You mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King. You mentioned also William Barber, and there are a host of others, and Raphael Warnock. All three of them are my frat brothers with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And so, but these guys have been in the forefront doing that, but there's a whole lot of other people. There are women that have been in the forefront. There are other people all along over time that have been in the forefront of doing this work. And it's not just civil rights movement, because civil rights was just, I look at it as one of the movements that have come along. I see Black Lives Matter, for the movement for Black lives, as being the current movement that's going forward at this particular time. And the reason being is because we've been dealing with this oppression for a long time. So you can say that we can look at 1619 and the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones that focuses on that this was the beginning of America. And that beginning began with people being enslaved, coming from Africa and being enslaved and brought to this land, and basically building this country without any remuneration, without any type of anything that would benefit them. And this is where I come from. I don't know Kimberly's whole background, but I'm sure she comes from this as well. And so this is something that has been ingrained in us, and that either you stand up and do something about the circumstances that you're dealing with, or you just, let it go on and live in an enslaved life. And we never became emancipated just because Abraham Lincoln said, I'm proclaiming emancipation. That wasn't the case. We know it was all economic. And so the reality is that the church and faith-based organizations have been engaged with this for a very long time. Whether it was the hush when people were enslaved in this country, they had these gatherings of basically talking about, hey, we've got to do different, or this is what's going on, or we know that train is coming. That train is a train that's underground railroad that's taking people north, so here's a way to escape out of this, and so the church has been in the forefront of that. Now, over the years, you had leaders like Martin Luther King, who was one of the leaders, major leaders of the civil rights movement. But that civil rights movement was really spurred on by, women in the movement, and particularly a lady I met years ago, Rosa Parks, beautiful woman. And she was the one who really got that movement going. But it was all built around this idea of respectability politics, that because there was somebody before Rosa Parks, but that particular person was one that, she didn't have a stellar record, per se. So she couldn't be used for the movement. But Rosa Parks came along and she had this stellar record. But the reality of it all is none of us have a stellar record. Not one of us. All of us have some issue that has gone on in their life. If you find somebody that has that stellar record, then, they're lying to you. But the reality is that doesn't exist. So we put back this idea of respectability politics and deal with the real reality of that. There's a humanity that everyone has and that we have to address. And if that means that I'm standing up against something that someone else doesn't like because it says that, your reality is one that has enslaved me or enslaved my ancestors and is not addressing what I need even for my very survival right now. And it's taking my life. I'm on Arbery, in Georgia, his life is taken. Not only black folks, you think of Kyle Rittenhouse and how he killed two white guys and white persons. And then a third person was injured, a kid, doing this. And the reality is that when I talk about prophetic activism, it's a focus on all of these movements that have been going on over time. So it definitely didn't start a civil rights movement. The real reality, prophetic activism for people of African descent started when what they call tribes, what we call traditional societies, stood up against the Portuguese and everybody else who was coming to colonize and to enslave people of African descent and bring them to this land and bring them to other lands around the world and just keep us enslaved. And so that's when that was happening, because these traditional societies were spiritual as well. And they had their ways. They even came together at times. It's like Christians and Muslims coming together or whoever, so in any event, when I think of prophetic activism, when I talk about this, it's really about being a movement. So how it plays out right now is that you have, instead of really focusing on the church in the building or being inside the church or what have you, the real focus is on being in the community. So I teach a doctoral cohort. I got my doctor of ministry degree from United Theological Seminary, and I teach this doctoral cohort there called Prophetic Activism from the Cross to the Community. It's all about the community being the center of what Jesus Christ was doing, or whatever your belief, your spiritual belief is, because all faiths believe in justice. And so if that's the case, then let's move our actions to the center of where justice needs to happen and take place. Now, going back to what you were talking about a moment ago, in terms of this society and how Christianity is perceived, what I see, I'm kind of like you, Aaron. I don't really see this as Christianity. I don't see this as a Christian nation, because the Christianity that I read about, that I not only read, but I interpret for myself, because I can read the biblical Hebrew from the Old Testament, that I interpret for myself, it's all about justice. It's not about this, how you say it, the prosperity gospel, or, that everything is bad right now, but all I got to do is pray about it and Jesus is going to make it all right. No, I believe in prayer, but I also believe that God uses each and every one of us to make change and make things right in this society. So that's when I think of prophetic activism, that's what it's all about. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I hit the button. I swear I hit the button. All right, that was wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Everett. I think one point I want to make, and I'll put the link here in the chat. But I think you're totally right. It's not just the civil rights movement. It's movements throughout. For justice anywhere, you'll see representatives of this kind of prophetic activism standing up and showing up. Right, showing up. That's the important thing. Showing
Absolutely.
up again and again and again. I'd just like to lift up the Reverend Lennox Yearwood Jr. He's the president of the Hip Hop Caucus, and he shows up for climate change. He's absolutely leading the charge there. So I think there's it's an enormous movement, and it is absolutely ecumenical, but it's showing up wherever the activism is required, which I think is phenomenally important. So, Kimberly, I think you had a question.
Yes, I am just so honored today to have this opportunity to talk with you, the Reverend Dr. Anthony Everett. And the reason why I say it like that is because my grandfather was the Reverend Dr. G.K. Offit. He was the first African-American in the 50s to graduate from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary with his doctoral degree.
Powerful.
Yeah. And he used to walk with Martin Luther King when he would come in town and things like that. So I understand. I come from that social justice family. So, talking about social justice and fairness and all these great things. And right now, all of us are on tippy-toe anticipation for the Ahmaud Arbery trial and the Rittenhouse trial. Is it just that George Floyd, we got that one, but is it going to go down again, or are we going to keep this momentum? But the thing that really concerned me, and I saw this in a clip, is when the prosecutors basically, the defense basically stood up and, tried to joke around about, Reverend Jackson, talking about Jesse Jackson, that people might want to take pictures with him and this and that. But what does it really matter whether he was in the court or not? I think that, to me, and there was someone else before him. Was it Al Sharpton the day before that was in there? And why are they telling these pastors and very well-known legendary civil rights workers to leave the courtroom? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as one who has sat in the courtroom before with lesser named persons who are being prosecuted, I think it's extremely important that people have spiritual support, especially when they're in oppressed situations or there's injustice that's taking place. And so for this attorney to say what he said, now it was interesting because the judge pretty much kind of, smooth over it and, it's the right of everyone to be to participate in this by sitting in the court. It's a public court, so you can't stop people from doing that, unless it's the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court is closed off, but other courts like that are public courts. So I think that it's a fear of people realizing that there's an injustice taking place, and I think it's this defense tactic to make it so that they have a better chance at winning the court case. I think that's what's really going on in that particular situation, because anyone can see that this man was murdered, senselessly. And I mean, it made no sense whatsoever for any of that to take place. But, the reality is that they don't want a Al Sharpton. They don't want a Jesse Jackson and others to come in there. So one of the things that I found out, I heard, and I can't verify all this, when that was said, and I was thinking in my mind, oh, well, I need to go ahead and ride on down there, and from what I heard, there's supposed to be like 100 pastors, black pastors that are there, supporting that family. Now, let's bring it to Lexington, Kentucky, where I'm sitting right now. In Lexington, Kentucky, there are some peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters who protested against what happened to Breonna Taylor, and it was a peaceful protest. And there's video that shows you that one woman was crossing the street and the police decided to handcuff her, or arrest her. And so they arrested her. And now the county prosecutor is bringing up charges, and the black pastors have come together in Kentucky and Lexington, Kentucky. And when I say that, it's not only the black pastors. There are some progressive white pastors that are walking side by side. There's one rabbi in particular that's walking with us, have come together and said, hey, this is unjust. And we've told the prosecutor that, you need to drop the charges. And the prosecutor's response was, I don't listen to black pastors, So I would say you might want to keep that on your radar for a future news story to see what's going to happen there, But I know what myself and the other black pastors will be doing. So, there's no joke about that. We that's, especially this is a public official that the people vote on, the people vote for this person, and this person is a Democrat, so it's just interesting,
The work continues.
I mean,
for sure. The work continues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey, so we do need to move on, but I want to just thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing, the work you guys are doing. Anything that you would recommend people do, like right now? Any of our viewers who want to help out? Anything you'd ask them to do?
Well, one, with Mission Behind Bars and Beyond, we need people that are willing to walk beside people who have previously been incarcerated. You can go to www.mission3.org, and there's information there where you can join up with us to mentor others that are a part of this. And the other thing I can say is, this is my first time being a part of this program. Support this program, watch this program, because you're talking about some good stuff. So keep on doing it, and then invite some other folks. I invited a lot of folks, so hopefully they were on.
Well, I love it when our guests plug us. That's that's always appreciated, sir. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're gonna need to move on and close us out because we'd like to keep the show under an hour, and we are not succeeding tonight. Kimberly, I'm gonna throw it over to you for our action events calendar and closing us out.
Okay. Well, first of all, on Saturday, right there in Lexington, the Black men of Lexington United and One Lexington are organizing a youth engagement fair. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the University of Kentucky Cornerstone Building, which is at the corner of Limestone and Avenue of Champions. You can find out more information and take a look at the Black men of Lexington United and One Lexington on Facebook. They've got more information on there as well. Also, the League of Women Voters of the Kentucky Fair Map presentation. They are specifically interested in hearing from counties that may have taken the opportunity to preview the map and have questions. You can go to their website, which is going to be the lwvky.org. lwvky.org. Click and you should be able to register for the Zoom event that's going to be happening tomorrow from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Oops, tomorrow's my birthday. I might jump on that call for my birthday. And you know who else we need to call? We need to be calling Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul like consistently, like make it just go off the charts, because the indivisible groups across the country have launched the hashtag Time to Act. It's going to be a week of action demanding that the Senate move forward to protect voting rights. Yes, we are still right there with no bill passed for Voting Rights, and the Freedom to Vote Act to limit partisan gerrymandering and defend our democracy. You can go to indivisible.org and look up the part about demand your senator filibuster. And that's indivisible.org. You can go there to find out more information about them. And another thing that's very, very exciting, yes, join our board. You have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to work with Progress Kentucky to turn our Commonwealth purple with online communications, efforts, and boots on the ground organizing projects, we would love to consider you for a spot on our board. Yes, we're getting organized, and in the implementation of our bylaws, we'll be setting up our official board, and we're looking for smart, committed progressives to help do the work. We've got weekly meetings to join and projects to implement. So if you are interested, which I hope that you are, you can go ahead and email personally. I'm going to give you his personal email. This is amazing. I'm looking on my sheet here and I'm like, wow, okay. If you're interested in base building here in Kentucky, as well as helping to improve and amplify our digital work, we want to talk to you. So you can send an email to Aaron Viles, that's AARONVILES @gmail.com. Yes, that is Aaron's email. So you might also want to email him, like we might want to have a party or something next year. Yeah, email him. Okay, so next week, let's talk about next week on the Kernels of Truth. We'll be back with a new show. We don't have our guests quite pinned down yet, but we've got some promises, and they are boom, spectacular. So I promise they'll be wonderful. They'll be great. They'll be engaging and entertaining. So you got to come back next week. And so let me do our little disclaimer here. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4, is affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, which is also known as CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. Couchfire Media ignites multi-camera, live stream, educational, and commercial video production content. For more information, it can be found at couchfiremedia.com. Also, we cannot leave tonight without giving all the kudos and all the greats and all the hugs and feels of love to our wonderful, wonderful producer tonight, which is Miss Annabelle Nigel. And she's also our social media chair. Yes. So thanks so much, Annabelle, for volunteering to help get our live stream out to people. You have done an excellent job as usual. And I've got all kinds of sunglasses for you, girl. I put them to the side just for you. And we'll be coming back. Remember, I told you you'll be the first to know about the Jones Report moving forward. But we're getting everything together and we're going to be coming out really with a splash. Okay. Also, we want to thank Nate for the theme song. You can find more information about Nate, another co-host here, Nate Orsham, at his website, which is natosongs.com, and that's NATO songs.com. And if you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook, don't worry, you can rewatch our shows, and you can source our links on Facebook. They'll be right there for you, and YouTube. Or you could just listen to us, like when you're doing some of your housework, you're doing this or that. You can listen to us also on Apple, Google, Spotify, and basically wherever you get your podcast. So I'd like to thank our guest tonight, the Reverend Dr. Everett tonight. He was a wonderful guest, so much information, just a great trailblazer here in Kentucky. And always, I cannot be here without our wonderful host, Mr. Aaron Viles, one of the greats, and also whom I care for, who always gives you the policy down to the minute of facts, Mr. Doug Price, who I affectionately call him Dougie Fresh. So you know what? Do something nice for someone this week. And you can go ahead and feel good about yourself. So meet us here next week at the same time, same bat channel. We'll see you here next Wednesday. Have a good week.